This is the Powered Up Podcast, show 122.
I might tweet and direct message somebody that way and say, I have a student doing a project. In a regular classroom, it all depends. I have middle school teachers that do adopt an aquifer. And when they went to a conference and met some farmers, they connected with farmers that lived on those aquifers. They may be able to look for scientists that are working on projects on those aquifers. And then the students can interview those people, and they've used LinkedIn to mine that information.
Welcome to a real-world education with insight and advice from teachers in the game, where current and former educators reveal what truly sets apart the great teachers and what it takes to make a positive impact on students. Whether you're in pre-service learning, new to the game, or a seasoned veteran, this is the show for you. You'll leave feeling inspired to take action because we are powering education by empowering you.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Kennerman, host of the Powered Up Podcast, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Matt the Thespian Rogers. Matt, how you doing tonight?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I've had a solid week at school. Things are moving along. It's a good time of year. I have been in a lot of classrooms in the high school the past 2 weeks, teaching a lot of lessons, either facilitating it with teachers or doing some model lessons for teachers to think about some strategies to implement next school year. And it's been with a lot of seniors and a lot of kids that I had. So that always makes it a little bit more fun.
That's super awesome. I know we have recorded a podcast prior that'll come out in the summer, but I find myself getting prepared for the end of the school year because, as you know, I am transitioning from 4th to 5th grade next year. So I have this urge to rip my classroom down and start unpacking already. Although that's not fair to my kids, but I've gone through the grieving phase, like sad, questioning. I never really got angry about it, but I was like, all right, why me? And now I'm just ready to go. Like, let's get this school year going. Let's skip summer. All right. No, I'll take summer. But I'm feeling ready to go. I'm looking forward to change and challenge and seeing what a year older kid can bring to the table when it comes to quality of work, independence, all those type things, which I think ties into tonight pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally ties in tonight. And if you've learned anything from me and maybe a little bit from our guests, is you should be having the kids tear down and pack up your classroom.
Oh, they are. Don't you worry.
Leverage that time. So, yeah, tonight, I said it at the end, but we are just so lucky to have the guests that we've had on this show. We have talked to so many teachers, so many speakers and authors that are all incredibly passionate about education, incredibly passionate and positive about teachers and about education. It really has kept me, aligned to that positive side of education that I truly believe is the majority, regardless of what you see and read and hear, maybe in other news outlets and media. And just so many unique classrooms and teaching positions. It just amazes me. And Christine definitely, she is the 2023 New Jersey Teacher of the Year. And she definitely is teaching in a unique position, but I truly believe she is shedding light on what makes her classroom successful. And that mindset is something that our teachers and our listeners can apply to anything that you teach.
I would totally agree. And I think we talk about how I use percentage. Sometimes if we get 70% of the way there as a regular ed content specific teacher, that might be satisfactory. That might be good enough. It is really cool to hear of someone who gets to go 100% in 40 different directions based off the kid's interests that she has. And you'll hear about the position, but it sounds both overwhelming and just impressive, and there's definitely a little jealousy on my hand. Do I know if I would be able to carry it to the same fruition that she does? Probably not, but she is a special human being, and you can kind of see why within the first few minutes of the interview.
Absolutely. So I really don't want to delay this any further. Let's hear from Teach Better and jump right into our conversation with Christine Girtain.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. You can find out more at teachbetter.com/podcasts. Now let's get back to the episode.
Hi, Christine. Welcome to the Powered Up Podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We are
Getting ready to go.
Yeah,
Chat about education.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to have you here. We've been talking to get connected for a while, so it's nice to finally have you on here with the show with us. So kick things off for us, nice and simple. Introduce yourself. Let us know where you're coming from, and let us know about your career in education.
My name is Christine Girtain. I am the Director of Authentic Science Research at Toms River High School South and Toms River High School North in Toms River, New Jersey, which is roughly 1 hour straight north up the beach from Atlantic City. And we're about a half hour south of Asbury Park. So if you have those as frames of reference with Jersey, we live at the beach. It's a great area, and we were pretty much where Sandy hit. When Sandy came in 2012, it really affected our school district and our students and our nearby towns as well. I started off K through 12 in Toms River. I was born in Brooklyn, and then we moved down here. And my dad commuted to the city. My mom did a lot of different jobs, worked at 7-Eleven and watched kids, and then was the food shopper for our school system, and then eventually got herself a secretarial job at the high school where I went to high school, one of the two high schools where I presently teach, Toms River High School North, where my brother is a teacher, where my cousin David was a history teacher, and now he's an assistant superintendent down in Stafford, Dave Itrabo, and my brother's Paul Stenzel. He's a history teacher at High School North. And my dad commuted to the city. He worked for American Express for years.
So you are all in on education from the family front.
Yeah,
So,
I had two uncles that were bus drivers and an aunt that was a bus driver as well.
Okay, so you're truly all in as a
Yeah.
family on the education system. And I don't think you mentioned this, but maybe I zoned out for a second. You are the 2023 New Jersey State Teacher of the Year. So congratulations on earning that. I know that it is a long process to go through that, and you are among great teachers when you're honored with that. So, can you explain your position, because you have an amazing title? So, what is your role in working with the two high schools in your district?
I basically facilitate 50 students, and that goes up and down each year depending upon the year. Some kids come out more years than others. It is a 3-year research class, and sophomore year, I like to compare it to flavors of ice cream. If they only know vanilla and chocolate, then that's all they'll ever think they like, one of those. And it's my job to expand my horizons and what I know so that I can make opportunities for my students to know that there's more topics that they can do research on besides cancer and psychology. I'd say the bulk of my kids come in and that's their frame of reference for what they might want to do. And there's nanotech, I had a kid build a 21-foot solar powered boat. There's things that they can do with data science. There's all different directions they can go. So I try to give them an introduction to that and let them know there's different options. And then I set them loose exploring first, I would say secondary literature, where they're looking at someone that's writing about somebody else's project. So Discover Magazine, those types of things, Scientific American, Science News, Science Daily. I have them look there to see, what's going on and an easier way to read it. And then they work their way into reading professional journal articles once they have a topic and a direction. And we go through how to look at those, how to dissect the parts, what goes in each section. And then they also learn how to present those. So I meet with students, once to twice a week as a group, depending upon what they're doing. And they're doing presentations on other people's research. So they're getting used to talking and communicating science. And then they are slowly developing their own research projects. So I'd say end of sophomore year, beginning of junior year, they're collecting data, they're refining what they're doing, they're talking to scientists in those fields, and then also learning how to peer edit and give feedback. So it's truly driven by the students and what their interests are. And I'm kind of just conducting in the background there and facilitating directions and trying to answer questions when they're not sure how to read visualizations or how to do the statistics. I use Data Classroom a lot, which is a great online tool to use so the students can learn how to do the statistics on their own projects. And then senior year, they can choose to compete in competitions for scholarships, or they can just present at our annual symposium, and the students present each year. Sophomore year, they're presenting someone else's paper. Same thing with junior year, that's in their topic. And then senior year, they're presenting their own research.
Holy cannoli.
It's kind of like science fair on steroids a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I initial reaction, again, I'm coming from the fourth grade perspective. So sometimes I'm throwing the idea of, okay, we'll do not just the idea that comes to the top of your head, but research and what that looks like, let alone to do it at an authentic level and complete level. I just, that feels, and maybe you can enlighten me, is that a standard expectation at that secondary level? Because that
No.
sounds quite impressive.
And no, it's not. It's an elective, and they take all the regular science classes. They give up their lunch in our district. That's how it's run. They give up their lunch, so once to twice a week, they're meeting as a group for those presentations and to give feedback or to do peer editing. And then I'm meeting with each student once in a 2-week period for 42 minutes to go over what they've read, what questions they have, and what their plan is for the next 2 weeks. And then they have to do 10 hours on their own because they're not sitting in a class physically with me. They're going to lunch or to gym, and then that rotates like that every 2 weeks. So it puts a lot on the student to be organized and to learn how to schedule their time and fit everything in.
Yeah. I mean, but that's also when you're talking about preparation for the real world, that is, especially if you're going, and as you kind of said, it doesn't necessarily have to be, and I believe you kind of alluded, it doesn't always have to be college preparation too. It's research based of here's a problem or item and that direction. Ken, I don't know what you experience in the secondary level at your school, but I know that our high school has had to make adjustments to preparations of what is that the responsibility of a high school student, which is preparing for post schooling life. And where I teach, only about 30% of the students go on to college. So I don't know if this is quite a bit different than your demographic or not, but because of that, a lot of what our sophomores, juniors, seniors are doing is if they are on a college track, they're taking college style courses, which sounds in the same vein as what you're saying. They're working with an advisor that's doing kind of an independent study specific in that territory. And then if whether they're going to college or not, a lot of them are doing internships. So our middle school and high school schedule is really, specifically high school, is structured where there's built-in time for those internships during the school day. And
Which is awesome.
you walk around the high school campus in the middle of the day and it looks almost like a ghost town, which is not a bad thing, right? That
Yeah.
we all agree. It's hard to find someone that doesn't agree that kids getting the opportunity to trial a passion and dive in with guidance, there's no harm in that. I guess, Ken, I'll turn to you first. And you have a slightly larger district, a little bit more affluent than where I'm coming from. What is your high school experience like? Is it more similar to what Christine's offerings are, or more like the traditional high school setting?
So I think it depends on what students choose to pursue. And I think that's what some of the best things that high school can offer is when you look at what you get in elementary school, then middle school, then high school, the choice tends to increase. we have a real and where in our area we have a really strong um, technology, not a technology school, but a tech school where they can explore different trades and different pursuits like that. A lot of agricultural stuff. That is a combination of multiple districts, so it's kind of county based. And so a lot of students pursue that. There's a lot of choice in electives. Our high school is moving to block scheduling, which I think is going to further enhance the students' ability to choose their own track because it does give you more flexibility in what you want to do. And I think it's so important to expose students to that so that they can really go, uh, a deep dive on something they know they're passionate about, that they know they are career driven towards that or college driven towards a particular topic. And at other points, it gives them the opportunity to try something to figure out whether or not they want to. And so I think it's a really valuable experience that high schoolers can have in that setting. So, Christine, before you were in this position, I know you mentioned being K-12, but what primarily were you doing prior to this role? What were some of your teaching positions?
I student taught in England when I was in college, so that was really interesting just to see their spiral curriculum. And I think that kind of always kept that global setting in my head, which I do a lot with that now. And then I taught earth science for 22 years. I've been teaching 29 years. And I taught bio the first few years, probably 4 years split with earth science. I had a chance to go all earth science honors freshman, which I loved. I actually just saw one of my former students today. Um, so that was a lot of fun when I visited a different high school in Jackson.
Okay.
So
So, knowing what you know now and experiencing what you experience now with these students in your new role, how would you take your approach to learning with these students in this specialized class that they have? And how would you maybe adjust or rethink or further emphasize things that you were doing in, we'll say, a regular classroom setting that you feel would be beneficial to those classes that you taught?
probably introducing them to a journal article, but in that setting, everybody would get introduced to the same one that was easy enough to do, and talking to them about how the visualizations are used to tell that story and what's important with it, and introducing them to the concept that they could do research. So for a time, I taught freshman earth science, and then those kids got recruited and moved into my research class. So I would teach students for 4 years, which was awesome. I knew parents, there were some families I taught for a decade or more. That was awesome. That very little schoolhouse feel, really knowing the families. I really know my kids. They call me Mama G because I know who they're dating. I know when they're sad. I know when they're not quite right when we're moving. When we're meeting because they're not one of 150.
But
Right.
adding to that, obviously you have the opportunity to know them deeper. But I was thinking about comparing overall GPA and college major GPA, and naturally how that is better when you're, hopefully choosing the right major in college. And I would imagine that it's got to be so, I don't want to say liberating, but it has to be so exciting to see kids taking risks in passion areas where they're actually motivated and driven. Because we often talk to people, go see kids outside of the school environment, learn what they're, if they're a dancer, go see them as a dancer. It'll give you some clues into how they can excel in your classroom. If they're an athlete, go see them there. To see your kids in their passion areas has got to be absolutely exhilarating, and one of those classic feelings like I want to give my all to these kids, especially when you have them over a long period of time. So I guess the two questions that I have are, first off, how do you keep yourself from running on empty, giving too much, letting that excitement as you support kids go too far? And B, how do you continue to guide students in these passion projects where you make sure they're making their own decisions and falling gracefully, but you're not interfering in their journey.
I think people would say I probably run fast and furious. So I don't know that I probably do a good job at that. Um, I it don't drink, don't smoke, what do you do? I would say that this is my jam, and that's what I get my natural high from, is that excitement when the kid runs in and is like, oh my gosh, I found this article and it answers exactly what I want to do. And they sit down and they're just spewing, right, this stuff. And they teach me a little bit about a lot of things. So over a very long period of time now, I have little tastes of a lot of different things. And at first that scares the kids a little bit, right? Because they're like, "Oh my gosh, like she knows this, she knows that." And that's just the nature of the beast from being, just like you guys. You have your experience for where you are, and then that's your repertoire over time. But what was the second question again?
Well, it's just like when you see them heading in a path that it's maybe like you could interfere, but your role
Oh,
is really for them to
yeah.
safely find their own
Yeah.
conclusions.
And I have to wait, and that's the hard part because
Yeah.
I've seen kids go down the path, and I'm like, "Ooh, this isn't going to end well because they can't do anything in that direction at this age." But it's very important for me not to tell them that, and to say, okay, so, how are you going to do that? Or what tools are you going to use? Or, what's going to allow you to get to that point? And then they come back and they're like, oh, yeah, they haven't come up with that yet. Or, yeah, I think I have to change direction. But that's really important for them to have that ownership and to have that agency, because they are, for the first time, in charge of what they're learning. And it's extremely liberating, and sometimes can be daunting, right? Because they're used to having so much structure. And it is structured, but it's structured in a way they're not used to because there aren't quizzes and tests. They're writing something for me and they're writing it over and they're writing it over and they're writing it over, just as if they were hired to do a job for someone. You're not giving them C work. Oh, I finished, but it's only at C.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They have to keep doing it till it's at A work because that's what the consumer is purchasing, right? They're purchasing that best thing. And so they learn that, I'd say, pretty early on, but that's an adjustment.
Well, and sorry to cut you off, Ken, but I mean, I feel like that's what we're as educators dreaming of. That is the scenario, and I agree. Trying to sit on the sidelines, especially that now you have experience with it. You may know topics, you might have research articles you would suggest that they should find these type features, but also just not good fits. But boy, oh boy, Ken, could you imagine, even with your fifth graders, saying, you know what, we're going to polish this. I feel like at my level, and just because of expectations and scope and sequence, these type features, we get as far as we can that is a C work, and considering how much time we had and what we need to move on to, that's going to be good enough for now. But I would imagine if we go back to, our dreams of education coming out of pre-service, or when we decided we want to be a teacher, was probably a little bit more rich and closer to what you're providing kids, which is, again, so authentic to what real world is going to require of them. When you're saying things like developing stamina, it's authentic. Like, it is real world, actually applicable, and going to totally give your kids a leg up when they leave your classroom, graduating and going into the business world, or because they have real skills, as opposed to hopefully you have the skills and you can acquire what you
And they're
need.
recording themselves. They're watching just as if they were doing film for a sport.
Yeah.
They're recording themselves. Some of the best advice I ever got from a student when I started teaching, probably the first, second day I was teaching, was a biology student. He came to the front of the class, he slipped this little piece of paper onto my desk, and he's like, I thought you'd like to know. And he just walked out. He didn't say anything else, did it very respectfully. I pull up this little ripped piece of paper, and there are 117 tick marks on it. And it said, you said like 117 times in a 42-minute period class. And that was the best thing that kid could have ever done for me.
Yep.
Right. So having that feedback, and the kids, when they're doing their presentations, look to see how many times, if they're a like person, if they're an person, if I've noticed lately, I say right a lot. when I've listened to myself or I'm doing presentations, especially when you're interacting with an audience or you're on a panel and you're trying to get the people engaged and see, that's one of the things. They say I've ruined public speaking for them when they go other places and the people are not aware that they're doing that. And I'll get text with a picture of a paper where they're doing tick marks on their professors or a guest speaker someplace in college. And they're like, "You've ruined me, Girtain." All I hear are the likes, all I hear are the ums.
Oh yeah,
It's
I have a few of those too.
it's so important though, because
Oh yeah.
they will be able to present themselves as much better speakers than their peers. And it's not just when they're in college. They're going to shine when they're out of college, because that is a talent that many people do not have. It'll be very apparent when it comes to an interview, their ability to speak and their ability to convey thoughts and messages, because sometimes you don't really notice it when someone's doing a lot of those things that you might do the tick marks for. But when someone, especially for a less polished speaker, but when someone doesn't do that stuff, everybody notices it. Everybody realizes how good of a speaker they were. They might not know why, but they feel it. And so when thinking about this with your students, I actually was having a conversation today about when you're trying to get students to do things that are a little bit more open-ended or a little bit more research-based, or there's not an exact way to do it. Teachers want to scaffold as much as possible to support their students as much as possible, especially for learning support students and other included special ed students. And I'm not saying to not scaffold, but I truly believe that sometimes the best scaffold you can do is waiting to see where the crack is and then putting in the scaffold, waiting to see where they actually need help. Because if we scaffold out off the bat, we don't actually allow them to conceptualize learning themselves. So I have a feeling, based on the students that you're working with and the way you're talking about a lot of these different projects and the reflection piece that you're building in, can you speak to how you are scaffolding for your students, but maybe more in a reactionary way? Or, you can disagree with what I'm saying, but I would just love your thoughts on that idea.
No, sure. The scaffolding, most of it comes from the fact that it's a 3-year class and there are sophomores, juniors, and seniors in the same class. So the seniors are modeling what the sophomores want to eventually be, as far as their abilities, their speaking abilities, how they are doing their presentations, how they might be using arrows and boxes around things to draw the audience's attention to a specific point in the PowerPoint so they can follow as you're speaking through a diagram or imaging. And they're hearing the seniors and juniors give that feedback orally as well. And they're seeing what's written because they have to write down. So we give, 3 positives and then 2 things that are constructive to, how do they make this better if they're, presenting to a large audience. What are those key things that are going to help them really take back that information, because the students have to learn how to present to an audience when they're the sole speaker, but also how to present at a poster when there are multiple people speaking at the same time and you have to keep track of your thoughts when other things are going on. And that's not as easy, as one would think. So those are all skills that they're seeing modeled before they do it, and then they're being put into that. And I also hook them up with student mentors. So there are seniors that have sophomores that they've adopted, and that helps me a little not, burn out, because the students can ask those upperclassmen the questions when they're doing an article dissection for the first time, or when they're making their PowerPoint presentations for the first time, or if they have to do an IRB, which is an internal review board paper, because they're working with students or people. When they're doing that for the first time, they'll show it to their student mentor and say, "Can you look at this before I show it to Girtain and see, if this looks okay before I go in there. And that's super helpful. So I like that interaction with the kids as well. And the older kids love it. They can't wait till they get assigned
Right.
the younger
So
students.
I want to highlight one thing, and then I want to challenge you for a little bit more as well. So you talked about the two different styles of presentations, where they're presenting to an audience, they're the show, and then that kind of poster style. And
Hmm.
I want to highlight that because I think it's super important when we think about presentations that we do in our classroom. One, especially if you have a classroom of 30 students, maybe 5 periods a day, the thought of sitting through all those presentations as a teacher
Mm.
sounds terrible. The thought of your students sitting through those sounds terrible. It takes
Hmm.
so much time to go through presentations like that. And I actually, in my 5th grade class, I eliminated that from my classroom, mostly because of time. And I
Hmm.
introduced a system that I used that was more of that poster style trade show like
Hmm.
presentation. And I did it for 2 reasons, or I'll say 3: the time piece, the boredom piece, and the realistic piece. And I talk to my students about, most people don't get to present to an audience by themselves. That's not
Hmm.
common in business, right? As a teacher, we do that all
Hmm.
the time. But when you look in the business world, when you look in the real world, you have to reach a pretty high level to get a lot of people to sit down and listen to you. But if you're a salesman, if you are involved in so many different industries, that idea of standing in a trade show, one of 500 booths, and people walking up to you, that's much more realistically going to happen in a career you choose. And so I would set up, half of my class would be presenters,
Hmm.
the other half would circulate. We'd invite a couple other classrooms in. I might invite
Hmm.
parents in, or I would send it out to the staff and say, hey, if this is your lunch or this is your
Same.
prep, please come through. 5-10 minutes, not a huge time commitment. And I would talk to my
Yep.
students. You can have materials prepared to present, but you can't just stand there and present slides, because
Hmm.
someone might walk up to you halfway through what you were showing another person. Someone might
Hmm.
walk up to you and see your title or see a brochure or see something you have
Hmm.
and start immediately asking you questions because they're interested in that topic. Other people
Hmm.
might walk up to you and just stare at you until you start talking. So I really put them in that
It's true.
situation,
It's true.
and they loved it. It was much faster, and when adults came through, they loved it too because they saw that being more realistic. So I wanted to highlight that because I think it's such a great strategy to use in the classroom.
Hmm.
What I wanted to challenge you with a little bit is, I love the scaffolds that you're putting in place. I love the student mentorship, and I don't want to discount that at all because I think that's so valuable
Hmm.
to do.
Hmm.
Can you talk about how you would take those ideas and those scaffolds and that student mentorship and take it back to when you taught earth science or you taught biology and you only had those kids for 1 year? You didn't have a 3-year senior
Hmm.
in your class. How would you apply these scaffolding strategies that you have here into a classroom that
Mm.
might be more common for others? Or just the idea
So
of scaffolding
yeah,
afterwards?
I do the round robin kind of idea with the poster boards, which I really like. And I invite teachers in to see that, to also just promote the program and have them have a better understanding of what that looks like and what the students are actually doing in that class. To bring that back, I would say some of the things that I do with the students now is they have to do an elevator pitch. They have to give me 1 minute with an introduction of, hi, my name is such and such. I am a sophomore or a junior at so and so, and they talk about their project. I think that would work really well in a class of 30 students if they're pitching that to the other student and the other student had to write down something about that project and what the key takeaways were for that project. I think that would probably work pretty well. And if they were also rating each other and peer editing each other for that. And then you are having to pick the top ones then to be presented or something like that, so that the whole class then gets to see everything.
Matt, I want to throw it to you too, especially you coming from the learning support world where your job literally was to scaffold constantly, especially if you had students on your caseload that were included, you had to provide those resources to support the general education teacher. But where do you see opportunity in what you teach to scaffold less initially off the bat and then have prepared scaffolds in place when you see that they actually need it?
I mean, using kind of, Christine, your model, a lot of the times it's getting the material so much that I felt like early days, again, we're going back quite a few years, was um, making sure that my students had content accessible to them at a reading or instructional level, whether that's auditory, visually, what have you, but it's not just guessing or prior experience that they're going based off of. You know, if they can't read on grade level, what is the closest research based material that they would have access to, or what am I doing to support them to get access to that level? And then a lot of times the scaffolding ends up just being what is the essentials that need to be included, and then providing the practice and the guidance of a presentation that makes sense for them in the scenario that they're dealing with. That's what I would use as scaffold, from the point of view of they have no less expectations, but maybe they have a little less freedom of the broadness of what they're choosing. Kind of like the classic, Ken, I know we were talking about Canva last week. If I send my kids onto Canva, they will spend 90% of the time picking a template or a theme. If I give my students in learning support the guidelines that they're working within, I give them the proper preparation, we've worked through, we've kind of gotten our butterflies out, we've talked through those scenarios, I felt like the scaffolding ended up being more so check-in and accountability, more so than a decrease of rigor or expectation, if that makes sense. Totally. Because you might be able to, in your position, allow the seniors to check on the sophomores. And even regardless of that scenario, you are hovering where you know you need to hover to provide assistance. I think that's what we all recognize. What I'm fascinated about, and I guess I'm such in awe, but I just learned that I'm moving grade levels next year, which is exciting. But the idea of taking on something new and looking at it from a new perspective, and I did the classic, like, how to be a fifth grade teacher type, Google searches, which, with ChatGTP, I need to work on my prompting. I get it. But sometimes when you take on something new and you don't feel like you have a great model, for instance, there are plenty of male fifth grade teachers. There are not a whole lot of male fifth grade teachers that like putting their stuff out in a comprehensive way. So I may get a few photos that are fuzzy and out of focus, but when you are creating something new, that there is not a whole lot of model behind. What was that work up to pace to get it up to speed to where it is now? Because you took on what sounds like an opportunity instructionally that has a lot of different directions it could go. What are some of the early stages of things that you did, and how did your program and your path and your outcomes change as you did it for a few years?
You definitely adapt. And I felt alone for a long time because I am in a section of Jersey where that type of class wasn't happening. Ocean County is a very blue collar area. A lot of my students' parents have not gone to college. My parents had not gone to college. And so looking at that and trying to make that accessible for those kids and seeing what worked and what didn't. I say with like anything else, it was trial and error. What worked, I had support because we are partnered with SUNY Albany, and I would get in the car and we would drive 4 hours to SUNY Albany once a year and meet with other teachers that were mostly from New York because it started in New York, this 3-year class. We would meet with them, learn from them, and take things back and then try it again. But the teachers I started with, the original, there were 3 of us, one at each of the 3 high schools. They retired within the one that retired 2 years in, the other one retired 3 years in. So then it was me training the next batch of teachers for that class to take over at those other schools. And then, you know, training the next person because there was another changeover in that school. And the one teacher that replaced the first teacher was my study hall teacher when I was in high school. So I was training my study hall teacher. And then when she retired, I replaced her at that school. So I'm the third teacher at the one school. I'm the original research teacher at High School South. I'm the third one at High School North. And I think High School East has had 4, all of which I've trained. And so when there were other people cropping up, I trained a teacher at Jackson High School for research, and having us all together was really nice to just feed off of each other and take a look at ideas that the other, because you're stronger from other people's ideas. We're stronger together, and when you're trying to build something on your own, it's never as good as when you can do it with a team. And so having that team, I would say the last 6 years, and the women that I've worked with to do that, and having that consistency has really helped to build the research class, because each of us did a little something and had a different take on it, shared that with each other. And then I found, just through searching Society for Science, and they have a research teachers conference, a national one, where if you get picked in a lottery, you get flown down or driven down for free to DC, and you meet with all other teachers around the country that have research classes. So that's really helped. I collect different ideas and things. That's what I do. Everybody has their superpower. I think mine is meeting people, seeing what they have to offer, and putting them together with other people to make a project better or an idea better. And I would say that's my approach, seeking out other people to see what they can do, and how I bring that into my class to kind of guide what the students are doing, or giving them resources. I had a student that dissected fish to look for micro and macro plastics, and we shipped them to Caltech because I got involved with this nanoscience group at Penn State, who said, "Oh yeah, and we have this other group called the RAIN Network, and part of their grants that they write to use all this big equipment, they have to do outreach with high school teachers and do stuff for free with them, and you can ship them your samples." And I was like, "What?" So we shipped these samples to Caltech, and she got to use $1 million machine remotely through Zoom, where she got to move the X and Y axes. They locked the Z so she couldn't bring this, $1 million scanning electron microscope down into the samples and break something, and she got to do the imaging. When are you going to have that, right? She will never forget that, even if she doesn't go in that direction. And that's, I say, is it's always just as important to figure out what you won't want to do and you're not passionate about, as what you are passionate about, because it helps you with your direction, and you don't waste time then.
Or money in college, pursuing a
Yes, right,
career that you
exactly.
realize that you
So
have,
they're getting that taste
right,
now.
that you really realize you have
Yeah.
no interest in doing. And so I
Ken,
I want to talk about
Ken,
conferences a little bit and what you mentioned. Matt, do you want to jump in real quick?
yeah, I using that, like, and I just think it's just a fun exercise. If you had a course like this, going back to high school, Ken, what's something that you would have researched? And Christine, I would offer you the same thing. And the cheap answer would be, I'd probably be, in the same spot that I'm in. But what is something that you think you would have taken up, knowing yourself at that age range, that high reward, low to no risk scenario?
And can I answer that first?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't think that I would have been mature enough to give up my lunch and time in the summer to take that class, because I worked so hard in school, that me, right, at that time and at that age, that lunch and my summer were my time. I got very ticked off when they first started, and remember, I'm 51, so they really didn't have summer assignments. They were just coming, and we had a book we were supposed to read for college that was for no credit. I did not read it, and I was on a full ride to school. And we came in and during freshman orientation, and they're like, "All right, so what do you think of the book?" I said, "I'm just putting this out there. I get no credit for this whatsoever. It doesn't advance me in any way. I did not read this book." And they were like, "What?" Right? And that was my immaturity at that time, in that, because I did not see the reward for my efforts. So I don't know that I would have seen, like, I wouldn't have been the student that would have seen the merit in that at that time, because of my maturity at that time. And me now, there's so many things that I would be like, "Oh, I wish I had time to research this or research that."
Yeah, my my answer is kind of similar in the sense that when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and I knew I wanted to go to a state university in Pennsylvania, and I knew what the requirements were to get into those universities, and I didn't have to try super hard to get into them. And so I was coasting a bit, but my senior year, I had double early release. So I was leaving on half days my last two marking periods. But I was actually volunteering at an elementary school 4 days a week for 3 hours a day. I was working in a sixth grade class the entire year. This was at a time where volunteering in schools was a lot easier. My sixth grade teacher was the assistant principal, and he set it up for me. And I honestly, I did it because my mom encouraged me to do it. And it was kind of what you said, Christine. She's like, if you're going to go to school and pay for it for 4 years, you better figure out if you really want to do that or not, because you can go to school for business and say like, I don't really like this, I'll just go that direction. You go for teaching, that cert doesn't get you a whole lot else. So it was kind of those two pieces. But so from a research standpoint, I don't know that I would have had something super passionate to look into, but I guess in some capacity, I did something similar to it, on focused on the career that I wanted, and it really helped. It really helped me set up for success, and doing that with her name is Mrs. Moyer. I still never forget. It was a great experience for me, and it was at a time where she could allow me to like actually teach lessons and really do a lot of stuff. I was doing a lot of student teaching stuff, similar in my senior year of high school. So I wanted to. Now you threw me off, Matt. I don't remember what I was going to say.
Well,
You
I
said
will.
conferences.
Conferences.
You
Yeah.
said something about conferences.
I will answer because you didn't ask me what I would have wanted.
Oh, sorry, I forgot you asked this question just so you could answer it yourself.
No, I'm just saying the
But I'm
decent thing, right? No, I was really on the track of communications, and so kind of diving into the understanding marketing based. I worked as the manager of our high school radio station at that time. I was in performing theater quite a bit. I was dancing quite a bit. I was also doing sports. I was just kind of a unicorn of things, but I would have been really interested to see if I could get the groundwork set in communication. And all I remember was people kept on saying it's such a difficult job to career to narrow down what you want to do, that I got so bullish of it that I gave it up so quickly. So even if it were to be something in that realm of media or research, or, this is pre-social media, but again, the impacts of those type features, I think that's the route where because I went into teaching not
and look
because
at you now with a podcast, right?
Yeah, and that's the
You're
funny
welcome,
part.
Matt, for starting this
Hysterical.
podcast and making your
Thank
dream
you.
come true.
Well, it is right in line. But no, I didn't necessarily go into teaching because it was my life calling, and I've done okay with it since. But it's a really interesting thing that I would be very intrigued, and just I wish your kids knew, and they probably do. Hopefully they do, especially if they're taking the time, like you're mentioning, they are out of their own schedule. Just how valuable that really is, and what a jumpstart that not a lot of kids are offered in different ways, but not to the fulfilled way that you're providing them.
And it's kids at all different levels too. I've had kids with learning disabilities, dyslexia. I had one girl who was what was considered college prep but not honors, and had a learning disability. And when she got to undergrad, they kept trying to convince her to get out of science. And she said, because I had the tools from this research class and I believed in myself for what I had accomplished already, and now she's getting her PhD.
Wow, it's amazing.
That's awesome.
So I wanted to ask about conferences, because Matt and I have had a couple of shows where we talk about going to conferences. We recorded one at a conference. What advice do you have for a teacher listening to this who has never been to a conference? How do they first think about where to go, and more importantly, why should they consider going? What is the value that you see in going to conferences for teachers?
You have to feed yourself before you can feed your students. And I didn't know they do a much better job of this for pre-service teachers now, and letting them know to join societies and that there are conferences to go to, and taking some of them to conferences. When I came out and I started teaching, not even the teachers mentoring me, and they were great mentors, but it wasn't, hey, I'm going to take you to a conference, or you should join the New Jersey Earth Science Teachers Association, or you should join. Until I went to grad school. I started teaching in 94 and I started grad school in 2000 because I was coaching basketball and I blew out my knee. I blew out my ACL playing pickup games at the park. A guy slipped on some gravel, took my knee out. I said some bad words out loud, and and I had surgery and I stopped coaching. And my
It's
brother-in-law,
allowed. You're from New Jersey too, so
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
portion of
I
it.
said a four-letter word that was not shouldn't say in class, and I said it very loud repeatedly because I heard the snap and it hurt. Yeah, but my brother-in-law was always on me. When are you going to grad school? When are you going to grad school? And so when I tore my ACL and I stopped coaching, I was like, I guess I'm going to grad school, and so that's what I did. And I was opened up to this whole world of conferences and societies, and I'm like, there's a New Jersey, you know, Science Teachers Association. I had no idea, and that going and learning and seeing other teachers model that and then hear about them traveling to all these different places. I have traveled so much because of education and taking classes in different places. I took a grad school class in Hawaii on the geology of Hawaii, which was awesome. And taking kids to Europe, I would say the best thing you can do to stay fresh, right? And stay relevant for your students. Because if you do not evolve, you will be a dinosaur and you will die. And that evolution only comes with knowing what the latest things are. I had to go to a national science conference in Pennsylvania, in Philly, uh, and find out about something that was happening in New Jersey because the grants are driven by them having to present at a national conference. And so they're not necessarily funded to present in their state, but they're funded to go to this national conference and present as part of that. So there were, and once I went to that first biotech training at Rutgers, and I asked other teachers, what have you gone to that's like this? Because this is amazing. Some of the best professional development at the Waxman Student Scholars Program that I'd ever been to. And they said the Wolbachia Project. And so I Googled the Wolbachia Project and then led me down this crazy rabbit hole into lots of more, a lot more conferences, um, partnering with industries. I really feel like instead of building this K through 12 STEM pipeline, it needs to be a K through industry STEM pipeline, and that industries have to take a greater role in helping teachers to educate themselves and then to also make opportunities for their students so that they're getting the type of workers that they need the way they need them. And they don't do that unless they bring those teachers in and have those boots on the ground and have those connections. So I would like to see a lot more connection right with industry to the teachers, and having teacher fellowships and supporting that. That would be my dream to get out of this whole state teacher of the year thing, making those connections and make that happen.
And I would
Starting in
imagine,
Jersey to do that.
yeah, I would imagine that honestly, us as teachers, the only thing we want is for our kids to go on and be fruitful in those experiences. So, it may being more work, or it might be a little bit more task by all means to adjust how we've done it. But if we know that it's directly correlating to the success, those first 8 weeks, they're more prepared as they go into the adventure of learning a trade and in that authentic industry based environment. That's got to be huge.
Yeah, I say get yourself to a conference, make some friends at the conference, exchange information. Teachers need business cards. That's one of the best things that I worked with a group called Nourish the Future, and they're supported by the National Corn Growers Association. And they handed us all business cards when they brought us to this funded conference called the Commodity Classic. And that was empowering because then when I made connections, I handed that business card out and was able to network more with other people. That sharing of ideas and hearing what the other teachers are doing, and now being able to travel around on sabbatical and visit classrooms, it's amazing, and talk to other teachers, and the ability to go to more conferences and meet other people, meet teachers from other countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do love the business card idea as well. I think it is empowering, and you can Vistaprint like $20. You can get a set of 250 of them. Those will last you. Yeah, those will
Everybody
last
should do
you
it.
a long time. And I just want to reiterate the idea you're saying is the conference. you hopefully will find a conference that has valuable content for you. And I think you will
Hmm.
find sessions that you enjoy. But talking to the presenter afterwards or talking
Hmm.
to someone sitting next to you is some of the best connections that you can make. And when you go to those conferences, the presenters are, I would say at least 75% of them are still in the classroom in some
Hmm.
capacity.
Hmm.
They want people to talk to them afterwards so they know how their
Yeah.
presentation was and they want to learn from others and they want to share
Hmm.
those ideas. I've presented at conferences for years now and I love it. Actually just happened this week. I had someone email me asking for my slide presentation from a
Hmm.
conference 3 years ago. And so like just because for whatever reason she needed it, she wanted to see something out of that. And like I stopped what I was doing and dug through my Google Drive to find that presentation or something similar to it because I just think it's awesome. This teacher clearly is passionate about doing something different in her classroom. And I've said this before when we talk about conferences, your district has money to send you. They likely have money they are not spending to send you because there are specific title funds and government funds and budgetary categories that are dedicated to professional development that a lot of times the districts don't end up spending that money because it's difficult for the upper administrators in charge of that budget to find all the conferences and to find everything meaningful and to send the teachers. It's a lot of work to find that. So I would highly encourage you as a teacher, ask your principal, ask your assistant superintendent, work up the food chain and ask. And there is likely funds available to help support you in going to conferences. So don't feel like you have to do it out of pocket and don't feel like it's impossible to get that support.
I had to write grants because there have been a lot of budget cuts. We lost 33% of our budget in state cuts this year. And then they had to do emergency things in the state when they realized, oh, we took too much money from everybody. um, but yeah, I've had to fund myself through grants mostly because of the loss in the last 6 years that our school districts has. But make the partners with the industry when you go to, if you can get to one or you have a vendor that you're using, you can say, "Hey, can I present, for you and present one of your things? Will you sponsor me to go to that conference?" I've had a lot of luck with different, vendors. Mini One has sponsored me. They're an electrophoresis equipment company, and they've been wonderful in that support. Very good at sending teachers to conferences. National Corn Growers, American Farm Bureau Foundation, if you're presenting for them and have gone to some of their other things, they'll support teachers to go to state and national
And
conferences. So that making those partnerships is
a lot of
important.
the smaller conferences too, if you put in an application to present, and I encourage you to do so, especially if you've never been to one, you would quickly realize, wow, I can do this. I can definitely do this. If you've presented anything to your staff, if you've done any low level professional development, you 100% can present. If you are just passionate about something in your classroom. And a lot of the smaller local and state level conferences, when you present, you get free registration. And so that's usually your biggest cost, especially if it's drivable. You don't need lodging or anything. Now you have an almost free ticket to going to that conference. So I really, really encourage our listeners to expand their horizons, step out of their comfort zone, and go to conferences.
There's also definitely the route of volunteering as well. I know a lot of those bigger conferences. I work for ISTE over the summer, so they'll fly me wherever I need to go. But I have an elevated position there. I'm lucky enough for the event staff. But that being said, I started by just being a volunteer for them. You give an hour or so of the time per day of the conference. They give you hundreds of dollars of registration free or severely discounted. And I would go to my admin and like you said, Christine, with the budget cuts, it might be a little bit dicier, but if I could walk into my principal's office and say, hey, the registration for this is $400, I figured out a way that I could spend or save $150 or something towards that, showing that your initiative really a strive to go. They'll figure out a way a lot of times, or you can continue like you're saying. I think your suggestions of, hey, this is a group that might benefit from you representing them or putting in a presentation. There are ways to take away that limitation.
And I would also tell teachers to, build up your LinkedIn presence, and that is your online resume. When you start going to these things, keep track of it on there, post about it on there, because when someone's going to look you up to partner on a grant or maybe invite you to present someplace, they're going to Google you, and that's one of the best things. I use Twitter a lot just because I'm science, and all the scientists are on Twitter. If the students have a question, we ask a scientist on Twitter, they get social credit for answering. We usually get an answer much faster than if we email.
What's interesting, Ken, do you use LinkedIn? Because I'm maybe a little bit more hesitant. Again, low level, and I haven't changed careers in a while. So my association with LinkedIn, but I know that it's growing as a social media platform beyond just how it was 4 or 5 years ago. What is kind of your, not to take it in a different route, but like, Christine, how else are you using it? Like you said, it's an online resume, but how is that beneficial to teachers that may not be leaving the classroom? So
Yeah.
obviously the
Yeah,
grants,
and I
but
don't, and I use it to make connections. Anytime I'm on a Zoom and there are presenters on there, I go into LinkedIn, I put connect, and I send them a message and say, very nice, hearing you speak today at such and such. Because at some point, I may have a question I need or a connection I need that I use, and I say, and I'm connected to them already. They hit connect. And then I'll remind them because I'll look at my chat, where I saw them from or use them from. And I might say, I'm looking for information on such and such about this topic for something we're doing in class. Oh, yeah, great. And they see that we're connected already, and then they answer. So I use that way to enhance what my students are doing and the connections I can make to my students, because I might say I have a student who's interested in such and such, they've read this paper, and I do that on LinkedIn and reach out to them that way. Or I might tweet and direct message somebody that way and say, I have a student doing a project. In a regular classroom, it all depends. I have middle school teachers that do adopt an aquifer. And when they went to a conference and met some farmers, they connected with farmers that lived on those aquifers. They may be able to look for scientists that are working on projects on those aquifers. And then the students can interview those people, and they've used LinkedIn to mine that information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've talked a lot about that, and I think it's so important for teachers to think about how they can connect with professionals, whether they are just passionate about the topic, they work locally in something related, or those connections are making at conferences or other events. And just put yourself out there, whether it's through social media, it's through email. You kind of find as you explore different channels what the best way to communicate with those individuals are. But just like I said, when that person emailed me to send that presentation, people just want to help, especially good people just want to help teachers. They want to help kids when they feel like there's a meaningful cause behind it or a meaningful reason behind it. And a lot of times it doesn't take too much time for them. So I think you're highlighting the idea of how important it is for teachers to reach out to both local, regional, and national figures that can help with facilitating conversation, providing resources, providing feedback to students, all those different capacities. So I would love to continue the conversation, but I want to be mindful of our time and jump into our exit ticket, which is the same 4 questions we ask every guest every week. Question number 1: what is the best thing a teacher can do to make a student's school experience better?
And I've heard this from a lot of the teachers on your podcast, but it's very true, is to know your students and to take the time to get to know them. When I was in an earth science classroom and I had kids that I had to discipline for behavior, I gave them my own detention. And I didn't just sit there and have them sit in silence. I sat there and I used that 42 minutes to talk to that kid and to find out about that kid, what their interests were, and we had a conversation. And it wasn't rewarding them, right? But I wanted to make sure that the next time they thought about doing whatever they were doing they weren't supposed to, they would think twice about it because they now understood me a little better and had a connection with me, and maybe that wasn't going to be their same choice. So I would definitely say taking the time to put into the student, because they just want to be seen, right? They want someone to care about them, and not all of them have someone that is caring about them.
I love that answer.
fantastic. I was a little worried that you were going to say They knew that I'd have to sit and talk to you for 42 more minutes if I continued. Not knew what you expected. So I know you mentioned earlier best piece of advice, which was the frequency of like. So maybe a little bit of challenge with the tally marks that you mentioned. How
Oh,
often you
I
said
thought you
like?
said light. I didn't hear that right,
Oh
but you
no.
meant like. Yeah,
Yep, like.
that's my
So
hearing, not you.
that's okay. What is that? Another piece of really good advice that you've received, and it might have been from, I'll adjust it a little bit, a colleague, supervisor, student, or even industry personnel.
Ooh. And it's a sad one that when you have an opportunity or there's change that can come your way for you to um, grow and expand, don't stay for the kids because the kids are leaving. So if you think, don't stay for that specific group. And that is a sad thing because I can't imagine getting to that point where that happens. But I was definitely told that, and I've seen other people that said if I had stayed for this, I would have missed this opportunity, and then I wouldn't have been able to help these other children, right? Because I was so concerned and sad that I would be leaving this group. But the students are leaving you, and they're leaving you every year. And so that was what a seasoned teacher said to me, but that makes me sad. I like the like one much better.
Fair enough. Interesting. I'll have to think about that one because it's dense. It's hard to swallow that piece of advice.
And that's, for instance, you're not staying in your grade
Totally. Yep.
and you're going to a different grade,
Absolutely.
and maybe you were really excited about that next group of kids, but you're making that change and you're expanding and changing what you're doing. You're not staying put. You're not being sessile, right? You're staying in motion.
Well, I'll put some numbers behind it on that one because so I taught fifth grade for a long time, same school, and I moved into teaching STEM in a different elementary school in my same district. So I went from seeing 30 to 90 kids because we switched a little bit in fifth grade every year to working with 450 kids because it was 1 through 5 STEM. I was only in that position for 1 year, then I became a coach. So now when I walk around in the one middle school, I know all of the kids because they all had me for 1 year, whether it would be right now, be third, fourth, or fifth grade. And they see me in the school, they say hi to me, great interactions with them. I have a group of 30 kids that had me for move up day 4 years ago that thought I was going to be their fifth grade teacher. And I
Right.
have maybe 5 or 6 kids, actually, one recently, a week ago, said to me, I'm still mad at you because you left and you weren't my fifth
Hmm.
grade teacher. So,
Yeah.
yes, that student was disappointed. I do feel bad, but I went from
Hmm.
impacting 30 to
Yes.
impacting 450. And so it's
Yes.
not that, you can't be everywhere, right? You
Right.
can't serve all students at all times. So you do have to look and try to make just the best decision for you and for
Yeah.
all students when you're
Yes.
looking at possible changes.
Yes. If I stayed coaching, I would not be the teacher I am today. And I firmly believe that if I stayed because of the group I was working with and I wanted to be working with them for multiple years, I would have not had the effect on all of the students that I've had through the other things I've taught and the research or teachers I've mentored. Wouldn't have happened because I would have never went to grad school, would have never went to the conferences.
Yep. Can I ask a real quick question before returning to the exit ticket? One of the things I found interesting is you said back when I taught earth science and I had to discipline kids. Does that mean discipline is non-existent in your
It's
current role?
non-existent in my class because they choose to be there. Yeah. I'm living in heaven.
That intrinsic motivation, right?
It is
When
big.
kids are doing things they
Yeah.
want to do.
And they have to be at a certain level, right?
Yeah.
It looks like the grades are inflated, but if they're not at an A, they really shouldn't be there. It's like grad school. When you went to grad school, you didn't get B's and C's because you were at that point where you chose to be there for that and you wanted to be doing whatever you were doing in that focus. And that's these students. And at all different levels. Like I said, they're not always the top kid, and not always the super achiever and everything else. It might be the first thing they were ever in charge of that really let them blossom.
All right, so this next question is going to challenge you because you just said you're in teaching heaven, but I'm sure you still have a way to connect to it. We talk about how the school year goes in waves. You know, there are great points of the school year, but there are definitely times that we are struggling to survive days, weeks, you know, conferences, parent teachers, report card, but just end of deadlines. What is something you feel like you could share with educators to help them power up through those moments of struggle?
You have to do something for yourself, and I definitely don't. I don't take enough time for that. But as I said before, I really think some of the things that I do through school are giving me major endorphins, right? And so I think that's my jam, right? Um, some people, it's they go for a run. Some people get outside and connect back with nature. I'm a big tree person, so I will randomly just touch trees, and I feel the need to touch the trees. And I know that's so bizarre, but I'll just walk by. My friend's like, "Did you just like touch that tree or like touch those leaves?" I'm like, "I did. I felt
Had to
that
get
need to,
grounded. Yep.
yeah, to connect that way back with nature." And that is different for everybody. Maybe it's massage if you can get some place where there's a special, right? And have a massage, do something that is just for you.
Absolutely. So it's easy to fall into facilitating a repetitive classroom. What do you think separates the teachers who are the ones seeking to change, innovate, and adopt new teaching strategies?
That what's
What
them
do you
that
think? What do you think
separates them,
separates them? What makes teachers be the ones that are constantly seeking to change, innovate, and try new teaching strategies?
as opposed to teachers that aren't?
Correct.
Yeah, I think some of them are just upstream swimmers, right? And you have that in business, you have that in everything else. You're going to have the ones that are constantly challenging themselves, that don't like to sit still, that want to evolve and want to change. And when you're teaching earth science for 5 sections and you do something with the first period, you're like, "Ooh, that didn't really go well." You're adapting on the fly and changing that because you want it to be better. Uh, some people, I think you're just born that way, and other people can be that way if they see that modeled well. So I think the mentoring and pulling people along with you. If you have an opportunity or if you're going to present someplace, I pulled other teachers with me. I said, "Hey, have you ever done this? Have you ever presented at a conference? I want you to come with me. I want you to do this." Because it might be something they never thought about and they didn't realize people were thinking that way. So if you don't show them they can swim up the river, they only know to go down the river.
I love it. Can I ask a bonus question? I already asked one, so I'll go another.
I'm fine with time, so go ahead.
Christine, can you just share, just from the uplifting side of things, what are some of the projects that you've witnessed that you've been the most proud of? What are the outcomes that you feel like have represented the why behind all the effort you've put into specifically this newer position? Whether that's
I'm going to talk about the first year I taught this.
Yeah.
And the first time I cried because of the beauty of what I saw. And that was the first midterm paper they had to do, where it was a state of the union of what you knew so far about your topic. And when I sat and read what they had learned and what they understood about their topic that they had put in their own words, and I had the one girl who was dyslexic, that it took her much longer to read everything, and she never gave up. I sat there and I cried reading those papers. And over the years, I stopped crying at that specific, but that was the first time I saw the power of what they knew things about. And that was beautiful. Some of the projects, I had a student, like I said, built a 21-foot solar powered boat. I called him BJ the Wonder Boy. I'm still in touch with him. He builds boats for a living now and signed the first draft. He made, I don't know what they call blueprints for the ship. It was a tanker ship that went out from Norfolk. He brought me the blueprints signed, and he got funding from Viking Yachts. He taught himself how to bend the wood by making it, I guess, moist or wet or something, so it was more pliable. Did all the fiberglassing, did all the wiring on the boat, and it ran. but he wanted to be able to water ski with it, and he didn't reach that, that point. But it got him into the Webb Institute for Nautical Engineering that only takes 25 kids. They have an endowment. It's out on Long Island. And then he went to grad school for free at Stevens as well, because they said, we'll pay for everything as long as you agree to do research for us while you're here. So that was a project that's amazing. I've had students that have studied oral bacteria. So S. mutans is a bacteria that causes cavities in your mouth, and they looked at all different essential oils to do that. And they've just kept going. So this one family of students, the Anaferettis, the girls all did, different projects related to either oral bacteria or fungi, and tested all different things, but they competed every year and built upon it. Usually in the 3-year research class, they finish with a project, by senior year. These kids were doing stuff freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year. I have a girl that just won a national environmental award, presidential award, because of work that she does with bees. And, that was something I saw someone present at a conference. She was in middle school. I had worked with her older sister. She was reaching out and saying, hey, can you look at our poster boards? What are some things I can look into? I said, you should look into the varroa mites. You should look into these bees. She started down that path, and she's now the bee queen of New Jersey and up for national bee queen. She interviews scientists across the country for the Army, and uh, has her own YouTube channel for that with the Army. And so the kids amaze me in what they do. Just absolutely amaze me in what they do
That's so cool.
in all different aspects of things.
Because it's the reason why I asked that is because I would imagine they just jump off that diving board with you and just don't stop. Once they have the preparation coming from your opportunity, I would imagine. I mean,
the nicest thing that ever happened for me, well, two things, was I do this partnership with Israel, with students that they collect data from insects here to see a bacterium that's called Wolbachia, if they have it or not, because if it's in mosquitoes, it blocks the spread of dengue and Zika. So they've released mosquitoes that specifically are infected with this bacterium so that they can up the percentage of the prevalence in an area. And then in Townsville, Australia, they average 13 cases of dengue every year. And then after they let these loose, then they didn't have any cases. And it's a naturally occurring, bacterium, so it's not an issue that way. But the students do a project with Israeli students where they collect insects, look for the prevalence. We do the same thing, and then they work on teams, and then they make a PowerPoint and a poster board with their team. They connect with them on WhatsApp and Zoom. They learn about kids in a different country who have English as a second language, and then they present to a panel of scientists from Switzerland, the United States, and Israel. And the one kid came up to me a year later after we did this project, and I do it almost every year, COVID, and all that. And he said, I never really, you tell us to do all these things and try these things, so we do, because we know it'll be good for us. He goes, but I never fully grasped how good this Wolbachia project was for me to do. He said, I got my college essay prompts and I could write all about Wolbachia, the whole thing. He's like, it's a really good essay. And then when I had interviews for college, that's what they wanted to talk to me about. And I could talk about it because it was this experience that I really loved, talking with these students, learning about how they go to school from Sunday to Thursday, and they're off on Friday and Saturday because of Sabbath and everything in Israel. And just that excitement was super cool. The second thing was when my daughter, who did not take my research class, told my son, who is a freshman and can apply this year, that he has to take the research class, and that she regretted not taking it because all of her friends, including that one I just talked about, had all these different opportunities, that she only took advantage of some of them because I said, you really need to do this. And there was that, kind of pushback because it was my own kid. And then my son said, well, I guess I have to take the research class now. I said, I'm not making you take the research class. And he said, well, my sister says I should take the research class, and it was a mistake she made. Well, I'm not going to not do that. So I just laughed, and that's super fulfilling for me. Super fulfilling.
Well, I've enjoyed this immensely. I know I can speak for Ken as well, and you'll voice that in a moment. But you are continuing to do great work. What is the best way that we can follow along in your journey and connect with you? LinkedIn, obviously, one of those options. But what's the best way to get in contact with you and follow along?
You can follow me on Twitter, which is CCGirt, Girt. So 2 C's and then Girt for my last name. Or you can email me at njstoy, so NJSTOY 2023 at gmail.com. And I'd be happy to talk to you about anything that you'd like to in education.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Christine. I have loved this conversation. And I just think I love what we've done with the show in the sense that we've been able to just talk to so many amazing educators. You are just another one that has just shown a different side to teaching, a different side to learning. And regardless of what you teach, applying the strategies that you're hearing with Christine and the ideas are completely possible in your classroom K through 12. And thinking about what's at the core of what you value with your students, I think is what we can really pull away and apply to our own classroom. So I'm just amazed at what you're able to provide for your students for them to shine and grow and really explore their passions. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for what you do to your students, and please continue to have a positive impact on education in your state as well as our country. So Matt, why don't you shut us on down here?
All right, as we power down this episode, Christine, without a doubt, you've left us feeling powered up. Thank you for your time, and we will talk to everyone next week.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe on whichever platform you're listening to or watching us on YouTube. Each week we get to talk to amazing educators who are making a positive impact on the lives of students, their colleagues, administrators, and education as a whole. It's been such a privilege every week to be able to talk to these incredible individuals, learn from them, grow with them, and better myself and all of education through these conversations. If you haven't already, please consider sharing this with a colleague, someone who can benefit and be powered up from the experience of listening to these incredible conversations. Because of Powered Up, we are powering education by empowering you.